things don't work out the way you expect, sometimes really good things come out of it, right?
Right.
You know, but sometimes you got to be gentle with yourself when things don't turn out the way maybe you want them to. Like when the house becomes kind of empty because your oldest goes to college. And I came back and Jason said, "Oh, gee, it seems like the house is kind of empty because Rosalie takes up a lot of psychic space." And so what do you do to support yourself? I ask you during the meditation to think of something in your life that you're working on, an issue or something. And one of the things you've got to do is be gentle with yourself. You have to be soft-hearted and tough-minded. You've got to be firm with yourself. Maybe an analogy would be like how you would treat a child. You are firm with a child. You need to set boundaries. Yes, you say no sometimes, but you need to say yes to the legitimate needs and be nurturing and a good parent. So how do you support yourself in a time like that with a spirit of gentleness? Well, brings me to my balloons. I like to bring these balloons out. I have two sides to them, so I use them for different purposes. But this one over on my right is the ego balloon. It's the personality self. You are here. You know, kind of like at the mall where you see the little sign saying you are here. But here you're on the periphery. This is the exterior self, the outer self, the personality self. And it has a place in your life. It gets you through space and time. It's a vehicle of expression for your soul. So this is your personal self, your ego, and your outer self. Maybe you call it your lower self, I guess. It should be honored, it should be nurtured, and you need to be soft-hearted, and you need to be loving, but you also have to at times be tough-minded. And the question is, if you're going through something, where are you going through it from? And if you're feeling a sense of overwhelm, a sense of, things are just too much, often that's a sign that you're stuck in your outer self, lower self, ego, personality self. And then you can adjust yourself to the inner self. The inner self. This is the self that Jesus spoke of when he said, "You are the light of the world, let your light shine." I am the light of the world, I let my light shine. Together. I am the light of the world, I let my light shine. So if this is the light, this is the lampshade. And Jesus never said, be the lampshade of the world. It has a place, but the lampshade doesn't ever really shine any light. So what do you do in a time when you're going through something? Well, maybe what you do is you're in the hotel in Queens, and you get up before your daughter does, and you go into the bathroom and you give yourself a good cry. I cried, and oh, Rosalie was so worried, about me. One time I went to go on an errand, and I took longer, and she thought I was, going through something. But I suppose I was, but that wasn't really what was going on. But do the journaling you need to do. Get in touch with your feelings. I loved the class we had on Thursday night with Uma Girish, and she had us draw pictures of our feelings. Oh my gosh, it just cuts right through our rational mind, and it gets that energy out. But be soft-hearted with yourself. Be gentle with yourself as you're going through something. And also, when you're going through something, when you're learning this new lesson, which you've identified, hopefully, at the beginning of the service, you're not good at it. If you were good at it, you'd already be doing it, right? So you're learning it. And when you're learning something, you've got to be gentle with yourself and patient with yourself. And think about this in your life. If you had kids, at some point, you took the training wheels off and they had to ride their bicycle by themselves. And they said, "I can't do it. It's hard. I can't do it." And you just say to them, I know right now, it seems like you can't do it. And you're right. It's because you don't know how yet. You've never done it. How can you do it when you've never done it? But now you're going to have a chance to do it. So give yourself a shot. Give yourself a chance. Let yourself be nurturing. Be a good mother and father to yourself. That's what you need to do. Well, what about with other people? This is where we get into the philosophy of non-interference. And I want to give a good shout out to that because I experienced that this last week as well. When I went to a play. It's a play in Greenwich Village with a lot of audience participation called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. And it's 30 plays in 60 minutes. And I won't describe it all, but it's very audience participation. There's a lot going on. But I didn't really think it was supposed to be what the people behind us were doing, which was, I think there was some substance abuse that had gone on before the play, because they were just shouting and yelling and doing whatever. And I had this story in my mind about what was going on. I was telling myself that somebody had brought their elderly grandmother who couldn't hear real well and was trying to shout at them, trying to explain to them what was going on. So I just kind of tried to block it out, although I had a hard time listening. But right in front of them was Rosalie and her girlfriend, and they turned around, apparently, I didn't know this until afterwards, and asked them to please keep it down. Doesn't work too well when somebody's substance abusing, if you know what I mean. So after the thing was over, these people really let Rosalie and her girlfriend have it, and they were getting really mean about it. And it was so cool to watch the lessons that have been learned in unity and learned in this philosophy demonstrated. Because what Rosalie did, she was soft-hearted and tough-minded. She stood up for herself. You know, you don't have to be a doormat. And she had shared what she felt. And then listening to all this, she didn't defend herself. You know, if you don't want a tennis game to go on, don't hit the ball back. And she didn't hit the ball back. She just would listen and reflectively say, well, it sounds like this and this and this. And so you feel this and this and this. And it didn't seem to slow this person down at all, but it started to make him kind of mad because they weren't getting a payoff. They wanted to fight. And that was not going on. It was so interesting too, because after they were done, they were just going to storm out, and then they looked at me and they started in on me, and I just said, they were listening to you. and there's a very well rehearsed speech, let me tell you, whatever it was, they were listening to you, and it worked out so beautifully, not necessarily from their perspective, but when you're dealing with tough situations, you don't have to be a doormat. You can be tough-minded and soft-hearted. I'm tough-minded and I'm soft-hearted. Together, I'm tough-minded and I'm soft-hearted. That's the philosophy of non-interference. I experienced this many years ago. About 30 years ago, I was working in an environment with a very difficult person, and finally I was mad as hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore. And I was going to stand up to this person and stand up to them and tell them what I thought. And I took it into prayer. Thankfully, I do that sometimes. I remember to do what I tell you to do. And I took it into prayer and I asked, oh, what do I do here? And I just got, don't stand up to anyone. Stand up for yourself. Don't stand up against anyone. Stand up for yourself. And so I withdrew my attention from trying to get this person to see or do whatever. And I was reminded of Jesus when Judas was he had it in for him. And what did Jesus say? Jesus didn't defend himself. He didn't say, now Judas, if you love me, you wouldn't do this. He didn't try to reason or explain or defend. He just said, what you got to do, go do it quickly. Jesus was not codependent at all. And I really reflected on that. Jesus, we used to say to people who weren't really open to what he had to say, if you got ears, hear. Let the ones with ears hear. He said that several times because it's not about trying to get people to hear. It's about the serenity prayer. How many people know the serenity prayer by heart? Good. Let's say it together. Together, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And you can't change what? Anybody else's opinions. You know, somebody once said to me, if you're a minister, you're a Rorschach test. You're not a minister. And there are times, you know what I'm trying to say? That's the ink blot test, and people will project on you, and that will happen. And so sometimes in your life, you have to do, as my old mentor Mary Ellen used to say, cancel their vote. And I love the way Rosalie did this in that situation. Well, when I was 30 years ago going through that tough situation with that person, I realized once I was no longer opposed to the person, I wasn't trying to get them to see anything, just standing up for myself, that I was liberated. I was free. I wasn't responsible anymore for how they received what I said. I was just responsible for being in my heart and coming from the best and highest place. Sometimes you have to say what you need to say and then let it go. And I love the way Rosalie did not defend herself, and yet still stood her ground. You know, people think that religion makes you weak. But you know, Jesus never said that you should be weak. He talked about being strong. It's really the realm of the strong who can forgive. Only the strong can forgive, Gandhi said, because only the strong have the sense of their own worth in order to do that. And Jesus, people misinterpret the things that he said. Now, there's 3 famous things that Jesus said that people think mean you're supposed to be a doormat, and it's not. The first is, turn the other cheek. You like that one? Well, if you he said, if somebody slaps you with their left hand on your left cheek, turn your right cheek. And what that meant was that they'd slap you the first time with their right hand, which was the acceptable hand, but then you were making them do it with the left hand, which was a bigger social faux pas for them because that was the unclean hand. And that's what historians tell us. So if you understand the history, he was not telling people to be victims. He was basically, metaphorically speaking, trying to tell them that you can be non-violently resistant. As Gandhi said, ahimsa, satyagraha, harmless truth muscle. Being strong-minded and soft-hearted. And the other thing that he said was, if somebody makes you carry a burden for a mile, carry it 2. Go the extra mile. You've heard that before. But when he said that, he was really talking about the Roman occupying soldiers who were prohibited by law from making anybody carry their burden for more than a mile. They could make any civilian who was not a citizen carry their burden for 1 mile, but if they went beyond a mile, they'd get in trouble. And so it was nonviolent resistance. You go for 2 miles, and they're in a heap of trouble. So it was a bit of a tactic, a strategy. The third thing was where he said, if somebody wants your coat, give them your cloak as well. But you know, the word really wasn't cloak. It was their undergarment. It was their underwear. Basically, you were to stand there naked. Now, in their culture, nakedness was not all that big of a big deal, but making somebody take your undergarment as well would put them in a disadvantage. Now, he was speaking metaphorically, not literally, I think. But he was talking about not being a doormat, not being a victim, but being soft-hearted and strong-minded. And this is also true when we're dealing with people and their desire for us to interfere in their lives in an enabling way. I remember many, many years ago, this couple would come up to me, and they would take turns. And he would tell me, you need to tell her this and this and this for me. And she would come up and say, you need to tell him this and this and this for me. And do you know how I handled it? I listened to them. I lovingly supported them. I reflected back to them, and I said, I support you in communicating that yourself. And finally, she said to me, well, if you really loved me, you would do this for me. If you really loved us. And I said, I really do love you, and I love you so much that I'm going to let you do this. And the beauty was that they worked it out amongst themselves, and I couldn't take credit for that. So it's allowing other people to do what they need to do. This happened with Jesus. Somebody came up to him and said, you go tell my brother to split the inheritance with me, to divide my inheritance with me. And the inheritance that he has with me. And Jesus said, am I a divider? Who made me a divider? And that's the end of it. That's all he said. Well, he's basically saying the same thing. Allowing people to be where they are. God grant me the serenity. And being that quiet, calm presence. You know, being the less anxious presence. The grown-up in the room. The sober, designated driver in your family, if you know what I mean, emotionally speaking. And I know a lot of people are thinking about this in a challenging way, but this frees us. It allows us to then focus on what's ours to do, which is to have that soft heart along with that tough-mindedness, and to be in that consciousness that supports everybody in our lives, allowing them to take the steps that they need to take, and then taking the steps we need to take. And sometimes that's a very challenging thing. There are people right now, and we're going to be working on this together in the prayer time. There are people right now going through a very tough time in Texas. And sometimes we feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we feel, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to reach out. I don't feel like, there's anything I can do about it. And yet, the consciousness of prayer is the most powerful thing you can do. That consciousness of prayer is, because physically, we are not able to get in our cars and drag people out of their homes, but we can support them and surround them in light and love, and that in and of itself is a way to support people with a soft heart and a tough mind, and doing what is ours to do for these people, because they're going through a tough time right now. And so this translates not just to interpersonal relationships or dealing with ourselves, but also when we're dealing with the difficulties in the world. A lot of the political difficulties, a lot of the other difficulties that are going on. We can surround people in light. Now, I know people say, oh, that's not enough. It's the most powerful thing there is. And then, the beauty of it is, when you take action, it rolls out from that inner center, and then you know what to do. In that situation 30 years ago where I got, don't stand up to this person, stand up for yourself, I found myself very quiet, and I just was in my quiet space, except for every so often, I would act very drastically. And I would speak very firmly, but it was very rare. It wasn't me going around defending, trying to fix everything. It was under guidance. That spiritual side of you, that you are here, this part of you, knows what to do. My higher consciousness knows what to do. Together? My higher consciousness knows what to do. And you've just got to stay out of that lower consciousness part of yourself that whirls around in your head like the hamster on the wheel, because that creates static in your brain, and then you can't hear your guidance. So work with yourself with a serenity prayer. Work with yourself being that calm, less anxious presence. Work with yourself and put yourself in that consciousness where you truly can support the people around you and support yourself when you're going through a tough time. Well, I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to join together and to give some support in consciousness to the people who are in Texas. And I want you to hear me. I'm not saying you shouldn't take action, but in this moment, this is not something we can do physically, but we can do it in consciousness, and then we'll be guided what to do physically if it's something for us to do. So I want you to just imagine that part of Texas that stretches from the Louisiana to the Mexican border, going all the way in to the middle of Texas, and just for those people, just silently say, the light of God surrounds you, and the love of God enfolds you, and the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is. All is well for you. Thank you, God, that we are guided in what we can do. And in this now moment, we once again get in touch with our heart. That powerful, energetic life of love in the center of our being. That center of us that says, you are here. And we move into our hearts. And in the face of everything in the world, in the face of everything in our worlds, we are energized, empowered, strengthened, and guided. Thank you, God. And so it is. And now to get in touch with our hearts, we just take a nice deep breath, we let it out. And we just get in touch with the beating heart in our chest. This tireless, wonderful organ that circulates life throughout us. It's just an outer expression of an inner heart, an energetic heart. That heart mind that is in us, the source of all strength and love and power. And so once again we take a deep breath, we let it out. we just bring our attention first to our physical heart beating in our chest, sensing our pulse, even feeling the coursing of the energy of the blood circulating in our body, imagining how it gives life, flows and circulates. And now bring your attention to the deeper heart, the energy heart. And even feel that heart of hearts, tingling energy in the very center of you. And join with me in saying silently, I have a good heart. I am my good heart. I have a good heart. I am my good heart. Because I have a good heart, I have compassion for all humanity, even when I have to be tough-minded. Because I have a good heart, I have a wellspring of strength flowing forth into my life. And I take a moment to identify something I'm working on in my life. Could be something very abstract like forgiving or standing up for myself, or very specific, trying to accomplish something in the world. And I bring it into my heart without thought. And I silently say, I have a good heart. I am my good heart. And I just rest there for a moment. Kindness of my heart flows, even when I have to be tough-minded and strong. And I am grateful that in my good heart is everything I need to support my life. I have everything I need right here and now. Because my heart is one with the oneness of God, the love of God. And I say thank you, thank you. And so it is. Amen. So it's time for our offering, and we're going to give in that generous heart. So just get in touch with that heart that's open and flowing. I give with my generous heart, and I receive abundantly. Together.
I give with my generous heart, and I receive abundantly.
And silently. And again aloud together.
I give with my generous heart, and I receive abundantly.
And so it is. Amen.